What do you do when the most dangerous man in Seoul, a man who has made entire crime syndicates disappear with a single phone call, cannot get his own 4-year-old daughter to stop screaming? My Sung Jae doesn't beg. He doesn't plead. He doesn't feel. But for 7 months, his daughter Ara has rejected every nanny he's hired. 14 women, 14 failures. The child won't eat, won't sleep, won't speak, except to scream until her tiny voice breaks. And tonight, the only person in the entire mansion who could calm her was the new maid who was never supposed to be anywhere near her. A woman named Cleo. She didn't bow, she didn't ask permission. She just walked past the most feared man in Korea, sat on the floor next to his daughter, and started humming a song nobody in this world should have known. And Ara stopped crying. She climbed into Cleo's lap, pressed her small face into her chest, and whispered a word that broke my Sung Jae completely. Mommy. The rain had been falling on Seoul for 3 days straight. In the penthouse of the J Tower, nobody noticed the weather. The windows were floor-to-ceiling bulletproof glass. The carpets cost more than most people's houses. And somewhere in the East Wing, a child was screaming. My Sung Jae sat at the head of a long obsidian table, his fingers pressed flat against the surface. Around him, 6 of his lieutenants sat perfectly still, afraid to breathe too loudly. He was reviewing numbers, drug routes, territory maps, things that would make ordinary men lose sleep. But his jaw was tight, not because of the numbers, because of the screaming. How long? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His head of security, Ro, swallowed. 4 hours, sir. My Sung said nothing. He was 34 years old, broad-shouldered, with sharp cheekbones and cold black eyes that people described as beautiful and terrifying in the same breath. His neck carried a tattoo, a black serpent coiling from collarbone to jaw. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ro's yearly salary. He looked like a man who owned the city. He felt like a man being slowly gutted alive. The new nanny, he asked, quit an hour ago. Ara bit her. Silence. She's 4 years old, my Sung said. Yes, sir. He stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket. Clear the room. Everyone left within seconds. Alone, my Sung walked to the window. Below, Seoul glittered through the rain. His empire, his kingdom, his prison. He pressed one hand against the cold glass. Behind him, faint and muffled through 3 reinforced walls, his daughter was still screaming, and he couldn't go to her. Every time he tried, she screamed louder. His own child was afraid of him. The screaming stopped so suddenly it felt like the world held its breath. My Sung was halfway down the hallway when the silence hit him. He froze. Ro nearly walked into his back. Sir. Quiet. My Sung moved forward slowly, stopping at Ara's bedroom door. It was cracked open. Warm amber light spilled through the gap. He looked inside. A woman was sitting cross-legged on the floor. Not the nanny agency's latest candidate. Not anyone he recognized. She was dressed in a black maid's uniform, the kitchen staff. She had no business being in this wing. She was humming, low, rhythmic. Something ancient that didn't belong in Seoul. Ara was standing 3 feet away from her, frozen. Fists still clenched from crying. Chest still hiccuping. But silent. Her huge, wet eyes were locked onto this woman like she was trying to solve a puzzle. The maid didn't reach for her. She just kept humming, her hands open and resting on her knees. Patient. Like she had all the time in the world. My Sung watched his daughter take one small step forward, then another. Then Ara climbed directly into the woman's lap, shoved her tiny face into her chest, and exhaled. A long, shuddering breath, like she'd been holding it for 7 months. The maid's arms wrapped around her without hesitation. Natural, automatic, like muscle memory. And then Ara's tiny voice, rough from months of screaming, broke the silence. Mommy. My Sung's hand found the doorframe. He gripped it. The maid finally looked up. Her eyes met his through the gap in the door, deep, steady, unafraid. She didn't apologize for being there. She didn't explain herself. She just held his daughter tighter. By morning, My Sung had made a decision. She had to go. He sat behind his desk, fingers laced, expression unreadable. The maid stood before him. Up close, she was more striking than he'd registered last night. Skin like polished mahogany, natural hair framing her face in a thick bun, dark eyes that didn't drop when he looked at her. Her name tag read Cleo. "You were assigned to the kitchen," My Sung said. "Yes." "Not the East Wing." "No." "Then explain to me," he said quietly, "why you were in my daughter's room." Cleo didn't flinch. "Because nobody else was going in." Silence. "I heard her for 3 nights," Cleo continued. "Every night I went to sleep hearing that child cry. Last night I couldn't anymore, so I went. Without permission. Would you have given it?" My Sung's eyes narrowed. Nobody spoke to him like that? Not in this building, not anywhere. "You're terminated," he said. Something flickered across Cleo's face. Not fear, sadness. "Okay," she said softly. She turned to leave. The door to the office flew open. Ara stood in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her small chest heaving. She looked at Cleo leaving. Then she looked at her father. Then she did something she hadn't done in 7 months. She screamed. Not a tantrum scream, a grief scream. The sound of something being ripped away. Cleo stopped walking. My Sung stood up slowly from his desk. Ara ran past him completely, past her own father, and wrapped both arms around Cleo's legs, burying her face against her. "Don't go, don't go, don't go." My Sung stood very still. His daughter hadn't run to him once in 7 months. "Sit back down, Miss Cleo," he said finally. My Sung didn't give Cleo a title. He didn't explain the arrangement to his staff. He simply moved her things from the kitchen quarters to the room adjacent to Ara's and said 4 words. "Don't leave her side." The first 3 days were a war of silence between him and Cleo. She was everywhere now. At breakfast, cutting Ara's fruit into small, careful pieces. In the playroom, sitting on the floor, while Ara stacked blocks against her knee. In the corridor at night, singing that same low hum through the bedroom door until Ara's light went off. My Sung watched from a distance. He told himself it was observation, ensuring the child was safe. It wasn't that. On the 4th day, he came home at 2 a.m. from a meeting that had left 2 men hospitalized. His knuckles were split, his tie was gone. He walked past Ara's room and heard voices. He stopped. Ara's small voice. "Cleo, where did you come from?" Cleo's voice, warm and low. "A place very far away, where the sky is so big it feels like it's hugging you." "Did your mommy hug you like that?" A pause. "She did, every single day." "I don't have a mommy." "I know, baby." "Are you going to leave like the others?" The silence that followed lasted so long, My Sung's chest began to ache. "Not tonight," Cleo whispered. "Not tonight." My Sung stepped away from the door. His split knuckles were bleeding onto the marble floor. He didn't notice. He hadn't heard his daughter have a conversation in 7 months. Ro placed the file on the desk without a word. My Sung opened it. Cleo Adaez, 29, Nigerian-born, Lagos. Degree in early childhood education. Graduated top of her class. She had been working as a lead child therapist at a private clinic in Nairobi before coming to Seoul. She wasn't a maid. My Sung leaned back slowly. She had taken a kitchen job in his building, the lowest position available, 7 months ago. The same month Are stopped speaking. He flipped the page. She had a daughter once. My Sung went still. Her name was Zara, 4 years old, killed in a car accident 18 months ago, along with Cleo's mother, when a drunk driver ran a red light in Lagos. Cleo had left Nigeria 3 months after the funeral. She had simply left everything, her career, her city, her language, and come to Seoul. To disappear, Ro's note speculated. My Sung closed the file. He sat in the dark of his office for a long time. He thought about the way Cleo held Ara, the completeness of it, the way her arms moved without thinking. He understood now. She wasn't just caring for his daughter, she was holding a ghost. And Era, somehow in whatever language children and grief speak to each other, had recognized it. Two people hollowed out by loss, finding each other in a penthouse in Seoul. He called Ro. The file on Miss Cleo, I shred it. Nobody reads this, nobody discusses it. Sir, she gets full security. She gets clearance. Permanent residential status, whatever she needs. He hung up. Then he did something he hadn't done since his wife died. He poured one glass of whiskey. And he poured a second one. It started with a broken crayon. Era had snapped her red crayon clean in half, mid-drawing, and dissolved into tears that had nothing to do with the crayon. Cleo held her. My Sung stood in the doorway, watching, not knowing what to do with his own hands. You can come in, Cleo said without turning around. He entered slowly. He sat on the floor, a man who owned 3 buildings and controlled half of Seoul's underground, and sat cross-legged on a child's cartoon rug. Ara looked at him with suspicious eyes. Then she handed him the broken crayon half. He didn't know what to do with it. Draw something, Cleo said softly. I don't draw. Everyone draws. Draw what you see. He looked at the blank paper. He drew 2 lines, a roof, a box. That's a house, Era said. Yes. Who lives in it? My Sung paused. A man, he said, and his daughter. Ara took the crayon from him and drew 2 stick figures. Then she drew a third, smaller curly hair, a little dress. That's Cleo, Ara announced. My Sung looked at Cleo. She was looking at the drawing. Her jaw was tight. She was fighting something behind her eyes. She lives there too? My Sung asked his daughter. Era nodded with complete certainty, the confidence only children have. That night, My Sung found Cleo on the rooftop terrace alone, looking out over Seoul. He stood beside her. They didn't speak for a long time. You had a daughter, he said finally. Cleo didn't ask how he knew. Her name was Zara, she said. She loved red crayons. My Sung said nothing. He just stayed there. Sometimes staying is the whole conversation. It came from inside the organization. One of My Sung's senior lieutenants, a man named Beck, leaked it to the tabloids. Photos taken inside the penthouse. Cleo and Era in the garden. Cleo at the breakfast table. Cleo asleep in the armchair beside Ara's bed. The headline read, Mafia King's daughter handed to African stranger. Is the Joy Empire going soft? By morning, rival syndicates were laughing. The Council of Elders within My Sung's organization demanded an emergency meeting. They sat around his table with cold faces. She is a liability, said Elder Chan. A foreign woman with no bloodline, no loyalty, no vetting. Sleeping inside the heir's quarters. It's an embarrassment. She has full clearance, Ro began. She has a child's affection, Chan cut him off. That is not clearance. Remove her tonight. Or we will question your leadership, My Sung. My Sung said nothing. That evening, Cleo was in Era's room when 2 security men appeared at the door. Ma'am, you're being relocated to the staff building, effective immediately. Era's eyes went wide. No, it's okay, Cleo said quickly, her voice steady for Era's sake. She looked at the guards. Let me say goodnight. First? She knelt down to Era's level. She tucked her in with careful, practiced hands. She pressed a long kiss to her forehead. Cleo, Era whispered, are you coming back? Cleo's face cracked, just for a second, just enough. Sleep now, she whispered. She stood up, walked past the guards without looking at them, and stepped into the hallway. My Sung was standing there. He had let it happen. Cleo looked at him once, just once. Then she walked away. Era didn't scream. That was the worst part. She went completely silent. The old silence, the hollow one. The one that had lasted 7 months before Cleo arrived. She stopped eating. She sat in the corner of her room, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes on the door. waiting. My Sung sat outside her room on the cold marble floor at midnight, his back against the wall, his empire feeling very far away. Ro crouched beside him. The council is satisfied, sir. Beck has been dealt with. The tabloid story is buried. Good. Ara's. Physician says if she stops eating another day. I know. Silence. Sir, Cleo handed in her full resignation this morning. She booked a flight back to Lagos. She leaves in 6 hours. My son closed his eyes. He thought about Beck's smirking face in that council meeting. He thought about how easily he had let them move her. He thought about a woman who crossed an ocean to outrun her grief and accidentally saved his daughter's life. He thought about a rooftop in Seoul and 2 words spoken into the dark. Her name was Zara. He stood up. He walked to Ara's door and opened it. She looked up at him from her corner with those devastating golden eyes. Appa, she whispered. He crossed the room and sat beside her on the floor, pulling her small body into his chest. She didn't resist. She was too tired. I'm going to fix it, he murmured into her hair. Ara pulled back and looked at him with complete seriousness. Don't talk, Appa, she said quietly. Just go get her. My son looked at his 4-year-old daughter. Then he stood up and moved faster than he had in years. He reached the airport with 4 minutes to spare. She was at the gate. Black carry-on bag. Maid's uniform exchanged for a simple rust-colored dress. Natural hair down around her face for the first time since he'd known her. She looked like herself. Not staff, not a guardian. Just Cleo. She saw him coming and didn't move. Flight boards in 4 minutes, she said. I know. My son. I let them move you, he said. No preamble, no excuse. I stood in that hallway and I let them take you away from my daughter. And I have ended men for less than what I did to you that night. Cleo looked at him steadily. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything, he said. Ara spoke because of you. Ara eats because of you. Ara drew a house tonight and put you in it. His voice dropped. I sat on the floor of that room for 2 hours after you left, and I couldn't draw a single thing worth keeping. Cleo's eyes glistened. I read your file, he said quietly. Zara. She exhaled sharply. She would have loved Ara, he said. I think she sent you to her. The gate announcement echoed overhead. Final boarding call. Cleo didn't move. If you come back, my son said, his voice low and absolute. Nobody moves you. Nobody touches what is yours. Not the council, not the elders, not anyone in my world. You will be untouchable. Permanently. He paused. And not just for Ara. Cleo looked at him for a long time. This dangerous, complicated, broken man standing in an airport holding his pride in both hands and offering it to her. She picked up her bag and walked back toward him.